all educators with a passion for teaching and a health for faith. Get ready for a transformative journey with the Educators with Oil podcast, where host Ronnette Branham is dedicated to helping teachers become better through biblical strategies.
Good evening. If you're joining me live, welcome. And if you're listening later, I'm glad you're here. I'm Ronnette Branham, and this is the Educators with Oil podcast, a space for educators who want to teach with wisdom, clarity, and integrity without losing themselves in the process. Remember that. We do not want to lose ourselves. Here, we talk about identity before instruction, about discernment over performance, and about guarding that oil that sustains your calling. Today's episode is titled, Why Professionalism Shouldn't Cost You Your Voice. This is not going to be a loud conversation, hopefully, because I'm feeling it. It's not going to be rushed, and it's not meant to correct anyone. It's meant to steady you. We want to be steady in what we do. Before we go any further, if you're watching live, I want you to do something simple for me. In the comments, just type one word that describes how this school year has felt so far. One word, no explanation. I'll give you a moment, and I'm not going to respond to every comment. If I can, I will, but I'm going to read them. And I want you to know you are not alone in what you are carrying. So just one word. I'm going to see if I can find some comments. And just describing what your year is like now, has been so far. If you could put just one word in the comments, I'll look for it. I know there's a little delay, and so I'll give us a minute. Tiring. Oh, yeah. For some, it is exhausting this year. Thank you for that comment. Mine is like, I don't know what I will call it. I think my word will be learning. I'm learning so much about me and myself. Someone says, hopeful. Thank you. Because, I feel hopeful too, because I'm learning some new things that are helping me right now. Even with this episode, as I was going over it, I was learning some things about myself. That's one thing. So thank you for joining and commenting. I appreciate that. That's exciting. Thank you for that. So let's begin right here. There is a quiet pressure that many educators carry that rarely gets named out loud. And it's the pressure to be professional. For many of us, professionalism didn't mean excellence. It means restraint. I'm being professional. It means watching your tone, filtering your language, second guessing your instincts. That's what I'm seeing. And then sometimes we quickly learn, some things are better left unspoken. And you weren't told, people didn't tell you, don't be yourselves. Nobody's going to actually tell you that. But you learn which parts of yourself were welcome. Somewhere along the way, professionalism became synonymous with silence. And for Christian educators, that tension runs a little bit deeper because, we don't want to preach. We don't want to go into school preaching. We don't want to disrupt. We're not trying to be difficult. We're trying to be faithful and wise at the same time. And that balance requires discernment, not disappearance. And I believe that's what's happening, because I see myself for real in this episode. And it's kind of not disheartening, but it's like, oh, now I see, so now let me be who I need to be, right? So the Bible says the wise in heart will be called discerning, and gracious words promote instruction. That comes from Proverbs. The scripture does not say silent. It says wise. It does not say hidden. It says discerning. Your voice is not the opposite of professionalism. A guarded, anchored voice is evidence of professionalism. I want to slow down for a second. Just for a second. Let me look at my notes real quick. So we just want to talk honestly. Most educators, we didn't lose our voice overnight. If you lost your voice, we learned to manage it. We learned to soften, when to delay, when to rephrase, and when to stay silent for the sake of peace. And initially that felt like maturity, but over time that management became muting. You stop saying things like this isn't me. This isn't best for the students, and start saying, I'll figure this out. I'll see how I can make this work. You stopped asking hard questions and started absorbing a responsibility that wasn't even yours. That's not professionalism. That's self-erosion. And if that's resonating, just say that's me. I'm looking for some that's me, because that's me. For real, that's me. And that has happened to me over and over. Over the years, not say over and over, but different parts of my life, I've saw it. I remember I was in college and I had a professor. He was, I won't say horrible. He didn't study anything. He just opened his book, and you saw the first time he opened his book, and that bothered me. And I spoke up about it. And I remember our chair of our department, he said, Ronnette, everything you're saying is absolutely right. Right? He said, everything you're saying is absolutely right, but your delivery is not going to hit the mark. Right? It's not going to hit the mark. Thank you, because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it because it's what's happening. People look at me today when they saw me 3 years ago when we started this one particular program. I was voicing my concerns, but this is not working because of that. How is this working? Now they see me, I'm sitting in the meeting, I'm just like, that's bad. That's not how it's supposed to be, right? It's not how it's supposed to be. We're just absolutely being quieted, being shushed. And so I don't want to be silent, because of safety. So I should have stopped right there and let that resonate. But that is what's happening. It's absolutely what's happening. It's absolutely what's happening. Let me see one more thing. This comment. Okay, I'm sorry. Just give me a second. Okay, so identity before instruction, it reminds us of order. Who you are comes before how you operate. It has to be who you are, and then you operate out of that. Your voice is not personality. It is assignment aware expression. So who you are, you're going to speak out of that. You don't say everything that you know. You're not going to say everything that you know, right? You're going to adjust it with wisdom, but say what's needed. Don't just adjust for safety reasons more than wisdom. We don't want to do that, because I see it. Like I said, I go in meetings now just because of the hushing, the shushing. Reminds me of I watched a movie with my class and with my granddaughter. It's called Home, and he had a shusher. The head of the aliens, they had a shusher. It's called a shusher, and it was like a stick, and he would shush people with it. And I felt that shusher. I absolutely have. I felt that shusher, and that's just not cool. So just think about, if you're adjusting your voice more for safety than for wisdom. Type yes in the chat. I like this type of yes in the chat. I've done it, and I'm still doing it. I'm going to learn today. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Yeah, we supposed to know. If we are always seasoned with salt, we'll know how to answer people. Grace and salt, not bland, not sharp, but balanced. That is professional presence. Identity before instruction does not mean ignoring the expectations. It means refusing to let expectations rename you. Expectations should not be naming us, saying who we are. Somewhere along the way, we accepted a lie. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to be less visible. things that I'm coming up with. I remember hearing people. I remember a lady, she was an administrator, and she said she wanted to remain under the radar. I never understood that. Now I get it, kind of, but I didn't get it. She didn't want any attention drawn to her, so she would rather be quiet. She didn't want to be known for being the highest rated school or anything like that. She just wanted to be underrated. Don't notice me, don't look for me. Just, hey, I'm not going to make any noise. This is who I am, right? And the scripture, but it never asked us to disappear to be effective. It never. I don't even know where we get that from. Kind of do, like people are, we think people don't want to hear us. They don't want to hear what we have to say because we're disrupting their calm. If their calm is disrupted, then they have to come up with some answers. And so people, I'm going to get into that. I'm going ahead of myself because I know what I'm about to say. Right. So the scripture asks us to be wise. Don't disappear. I want to ground this in a real situation. So here's my situation, because this is where many educators stop speaking. So let me give you a real classroom example of how this happened. There were two moments in my life, right, where I became quieter. Not because I lacked concern. I was not because I lacked clarity, because I knew what I was talking about, but because the responses I received made it clear that answers are not being sought. They're not going to look for an answer from me, right? The first situation involved data. We were told I was told, I don't know, but we were told that the end result was that these tests are mandated by the state. Of course, we know you have to take tests, but my problem wasn't the test. My problem was the analyzing of the data. We had a whole meeting. We want to analyze this data. When I know for a fact, my students, maybe I had two who could read on grade level, right? They were reading on grade level, so they could read every passage and answer, most of the comprehensive questions, right? They can answer that. But we had a whole meeting, whole workshop analyzing this data, right? What data? That's not real data. This data is invalid because my students are guessing because they can't read I said, first read the questions and then read the story, then answer the question. Read the passage, then answer the questions, right? They're just sitting there until they feel like it's time, like they pretended to read. Then they click, click, click. It's the same as me closing my eyes and just going down, clicking. So that's no real data. It's not valid. So that was my concern. I don't want to sit in this meeting analyzing data saying, oh, my students are good in phonics, but the comprehension of this matter wasn't so great. Or maybe they could read, but they didn't understand everything. Maybe they understood a little bit. I thought that was useless, senseless. I'm not. Why? Right? So that's me, right? That's me. That's where it happened. So, and when we hear the word mandated, it usually signals, it actually signaled that the questioning is no longer welcome. That's it. That was the end of our conversation. But here's the issue. Like I said, we were expected to analyze data, assessment data, wasn't valid. Students were given grade level assessments, all that. But what? Why am I analyzing some? So out of 18 students in my class, I'm just going to say in my class, 2 maybe could read it. So guessing false scores, right? So no value from this meeting. But in the end, I was shushed. Right? When students, guess you're not measuring anything. I'm trying to explain this to us. Stop. Whoa. We got 50 people in this room, right? And so they couldn't explain it. They just said, this is what we're analyzing. Did the students comprehend this section? Did it really? It didn't match. They couldn't answer me how this data didn't match my students in my classroom, right? It was flawed data. So this is what we call procedural cover, right? So I raised another concern about curriculum and what it was producing in our practice. I wasn't emotional. I was sometimes, but not this. It wasn't, I wasn't complaining. I just statements of instructional truth. The response I received was, I'm sorry you feel that way. I was not expressing the feeling. I was naming a reality. And in moments like that, that's where people stop talking. Not because we're unsure. No, I wasn't unsure. I knew what I was talking about. I knew what was happening in my classroom. It wasn't conducive to teaching my students how to read with this program that we had. We needed a little bit more, right? Not to mention my students didn't speak English, and I was teaching in English. That's that, right? And so it was like, I'm sorry you feel that way. It wasn't. They didn't recognize, clarity as being engaged when they come to their administration and saying, this is what my concern is. So it was more, I was unprofessional. So it was better for me to be silent, to be quiet, and then to voice my concern. So that's erosion. So I just want to know, I just want you to know that you're not the only person who experienced this. I know I can't be. How could I be? Because I come across teachers all the time. When I am talking to people, I talk to educators every meeting, every workshop, everything we have, and I'm talking to people all through hallways. And I don't know if they understand that I'm gathering information. I don't call it, I'm like a reporter. I'm gathering information, I'm gathering data, right? How are the teachers feeling about this? What is it? And so teachers have these concerns, but they're not speaking about it. Because I talk to people and they will say to me, who are you talking to? Who are you going to tell this to? They're not going to listen to you. Oh, forget about it. I learned, I've been here for 50 years and, however many years, right? So we get silence and people don't want to ask any more questions, presenting concerns, try to get clarity on things, so we are met with silence, vague answers, or like I said, I'm sorry you feel that way. If you've been there, you can type been there. I know I've been there. And if you're not ready to type that, just stay. This part is going to really matter. It matters, right? So I want to say what losing your voice looks like in practice. Explaining your decisions apologetically. We say things like, I might be wrong, but I know this probably isn't how we usually do it. That. I don't want to cause any issues. I just thought I'd ask. You're not unsure. You're pre-softening for clarity, just in case it's inconvenient. You already know what your students need, but instead of stating it plainly, you apologize in advance for having that discernment. That's not humility for real. It's conditioning. It reminds me of I'm trying to think of the scientist. I'm thinking all day. Instead of Googling it, I could have had it. But it reminds me of this. When we took psychology, we talked about these doctors, these psychologists who trained the dogs. Every time they rang a bell, they gave them food. So then the dogs, every time they heard the bell ring, they would salivate, right? And so then after a while, they took the food, but they just rang the bell, and the dogs would salivate every time because they thought there was food there. So this reminds me of when we get a concern and we look at an administrator, we want to go, I know we don't normally do this, but then you think about it and you say, nah, never mind. Right? Because we're conditioned now, just shush. Right? So we might say things like, I completely understand the directive, but I know we're all under pressure. However, I'm not trying to push back. I just want to understand. Notice what happens. You spend more time proving that you're not complaining, that you're compliant, that you're explaining, instead of explaining what you actually see in your classroom. We want reassurance. We don't want to look like that person that's complaining. We don't want that. And then over time, we learn to lead with permission seeking instead of professional. We're learning. They have that shusher. They have that shusher. They have that. They have that conditioning. That conditioning is something. We need we need to recondition ourselves, retrain ourselves, because what's happening is not professional. We're seeking permission, and then we're quieted and we're shush. We want to use our professional judgment. For real, we really do. We need to get back into that. Don't shrink your language to avoid tension. We might say things like, maybe it's just my class. It's probably not a big deal, but guess what? It is a big deal, because clarity keeps getting minimized, so discomfort can be avoided. You start replacing direct language with vague language, right? Stop. We trade precision for politeness. Maybe it's just my class. And eventually the questioning that we know to be true, it's not, things are happening. We're going into erosion. Like, we are self-eroding for real. Self-erosion is not what we're supposed to be doing, right? And another thing that happens, it is, I don't know if you heard this stuff before, or if you felt this before. I know I didn't put in my notes to say something in the chat, but I've heard this, or I've seen this. Like, this is actually something that happens. A comment will be, this is real. How about that? This is real. This is actually real. So I'm looking. I like comments. This is cool for me. I like comments. And so one thing, sometimes we feel relief when we get into a meeting and don't say anything, because that's why I saw myself last month, and it didn't feel very good. That's when, we talk about that cognitive dissonance, where we know to do something, but we do the opposite, and then we feel uncomfortable inside. Nobody can see it. They think you're being mature. You're not talking. That lady is good right now, and you're not. So you feel relief when you leave a meeting, instead of peace when you stay quiet. That's the quietest example, and the most telling, because relief sounds like, well, at least I didn't say anything. At least I won't have to explain myself. At least I won't be labeled as difficult. Peace sounds different than that. Peace comes from alignment. Relief comes from escape. If staying quiet leaves you feeling relieved but unsettled, like I just said, that's not wisdom. That's self-protection. And professionalism should never require self-erasure. It shouldn't. When silence feels better than clarity, we have a problem. Your voice has been reframed as risk. That means, like, my voice, if I talk, I'm risking something. I'm risking that peace. I'm risking that peace between me and her, that they won't see me as compliant anymore. So that is not the design. That is not how we are designed, to get quiet when we know we should speak up. Because I know sometimes we think administration is not hearing us, but if enough of us speak up about truth, I believe they'll hear some. They will actually hear something that we have to say. I actually believe that. Maybe that's just me. That's what we say, right? But we don't want to be. This is not humility. That's fatigue. We're tired of talking. So let me ask you this, like, honest answer in the chat. Have you ever stayed quiet, not because you lacked wisdom, but because you were tired of explaining yourself? Type yes or not yet, right? Type yes or not yet, because don't tell me it's never going to happen. If it hasn't, that you probably kind of knew. Probably haven't been teaching that long, that you just got quiet, because you didn't want to cause any stress in the room, right? It wasn't wisdom. Wisdom didn't tell you to do that. So that's what I'm thinking right now. That's what I'm thinking. So if you were tired of explaining yourself, you're like, I keep talking to people not answering, people not feeling me. And it's not even a feeling thing. It's wisdom. This is exactly what's happening in the classroom when we do this or that. whatever it is the directive is, and it's not working, and I'm trying to express myself and speak out of clarity. And I'm tired of talking. I keep talking. I'm talking. I know with our DLI program, I was tired of talking. I just let me out, right? And this conversation is for you if you ever felt like that. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind. That's so true. You don't have to be afraid. What they gonna do? Like what? A sound mind speaks clearly, even when it's gentle. Just speak the truth. That's what we do. Just speak the truth, right? Oh, 1 second. 1 second. So a professional voice. Let me take this off 1 second. How do I get rid of this? Okay, here I go. Professional voice is rooted in identity, filtered through wisdom, aware of context, and it's not performative and it's not loud. So that's our professional voice. So we don't have to worry about if our voice is too loud for somebody. Just speak it. It's anchored. As long as you're anchored in your voice and truth, we got this. You got this. Are you quiet because you're discerning, or because you're tired of explaining yourself? That's just where we are. I don't want to feel like I don't have to explain myself because I tried this and I've been trying. I have the notes, the data, or the documentation to prove this is what's happening in my classroom, and I don't want to. I'm tired of talking. You're not listening. People, shush. Yeah, that's what it is, right? So that's what it is. We think sometimes, can I speak and still keep my job? That's that Christian thing, that's what we feel like we come in at. Can I be clear and still be wise? Can I lead without crossing lines? Because mostly who we're talking to is administration. Talking to your coworkers, it doesn't really, we all feel the same way. So you just talk to the choir. But when we go with these concerns, we're most of the time speaking to administration, and they have that line right there. Oh, you're I don't want to, what we call it, not beneath me, but I have more power, right? So we don't want to feel like we're crossing lines. And yes, you can use your voice, right? But only when identity leads. If whoever you are is first, and then you talk about how you're supposed to operate, right? The integrity of the upright guides them. That's Proverbs 11:3, right? Integrity guides tone, it guides timing, and it guides restraint, not fear. It doesn't. Fear doesn't guide any of that. You're walking around, it doesn't. And integrity doesn't guide fear, because you know who you are. And that's when identity before instruction comes in, right? Before we close, I want to pause just for a minute. If anything in this conversation stirred you, anything in this conversation stirred you, not emotionally, but internally, that quiet recognition of, yeah, that's it right there. That matters, because clarity doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it settles, So let me say this clearly. If you've been silent, it doesn't mean you're weak. We're not weak because we're silent, because I know I'm not. It means you were discerning. But discernment is not the same as disappearance. So you can discern, this is what needs to be said, this is how it needs to be said, but that doesn't mean to be quiet. That doesn't mean to disappear. Now they don't hear from me at all, right? And professionalism was never meant to cost you your voice. Being professional doesn't mean to quiet that voice. Now you're not going to talk. You're not going to say anything else. Sorry about that. Um, it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean, um, it's meant to refine your voice, right? There's no, are you quiet right now because you're discerning or because you're carrying too much alone? That's one other thing. Are you carrying too much alone? So then you're not going to talk about it. You just carry it. There's no right answer. This is an exposure. It's acknowledgement. Think about why you're quiet right now. If you're watching, if you're watching this on replay, I want you to know this space is still held for you. So leave a comment with the word present, not for me, but for you. So you'll know that I'm listening. I'm right here in the room with you, right? This month, we are on month 2, demand and credibility of identity before instruction. So we finished a month of that. We've been talking about identity before instruction. This means we are no longer asking if your voice matters, because we know our voices matter, right? We're not asking that anymore. We understand that now. But we're learning how to steward it with wisdom, integrity, and timing. We have, how people, that's my word for the year is steward, right? And so I'm learning how to steward what God has given me. And guess what? Our voice is one of those things that he has given us, and we have to learn how to steward it. That doesn't mean be quiet because they got that shusher. No, because we're conditioned. No, it means to speak with wisdom when you should about a concern. That is a real, true concern about things happening in our classrooms, in our schools, whether you're an administrator, whether you're a teacher, right? Whether you work, wherever you work, we have to learn how to use our voice with wisdom and know that we have to steward our voice well. And so that's where I am. And if this conversation has affirmed something you struggle to name, you'll find a continuation path in that. You see my I put it up there. I was supposed to take it down and put it back, but my QR code up there, it leads you to a little survey, and then it will send you to my email list. So you'll find, and we can talk about it, other conversations. If you want another part 2 of this episode, then use that QR code, scan it, take this little survey, and then I'll email you back. And I appreciate that. So we're going to navigate real systems with real discernment, not pressure, just alignment. That's what we want to be. Remember to guard your oil and anchor your identity. Remember, wisdom does not require silence. So I will see you next time. Is there any more comments before we go? Because we could have another comment or two. That was pretty fast. So just remember, if you're an educator, if you're an administrator, if you feel exhausted, somebody said they felt tired. That was their word. Hopefully we gain some vocabulary that we can use, that we don't have to be so tired we're wearing down because we're carrying weights that's not ours, that don't belong to us. Go back and listen to the last 4 episodes of identity before instruction, and then we'll gain some more things about our identity that we'll understand to take off some of that load, and we won't be so tired. And sometimes we're tired because it's not because of the workload, it's because of our identity is misaligned. And that's another episode. We'll understand that as time goes on. So again, let's navigate with wisdom. And thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I appreciate you all. Take care and have a blessed rest of your day.
Subscribe to Educators with Oil podcast on your preferred platform and join Ronnette on this mission to empower teachers through the wisdom of the Bible. Because when biblical strategies meet the classroom, extraordinary teaching happens.
Educators, let's shine a light on our classrooms. See you on Educators with Oil podcast, where teaching and faith unite.